Humanity Matters.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Legacy Chronicles. I am your host today, Zachary Graulich. I'm the Assistant Director of Education here at HMTC, and I am joined by one of the second-generation survivors and docents in our community, Linda Orgel. Thank you so much for being here today, Linda.
Oh, I'm honored to have the opportunity to speak with you.
I'm glad to hear it. So, to start off, I would love for you to tell myself and our listeners a little bit about your parents, their experiences as survivors, if both of your parents are survivors, and, just a little bit about your family history.
Okay. Well, my father was a Holocaust survivor. He grew up in Poland, and around the time he was 13, the Nazis invaded, and he was sent to a ghetto, and then to several different work environments, slave labor environments, and eventually sent to a subcamp of Majdanek where he escaped into the forest and was found by a forester's family and hidden for a short period of time. And then once a neighbor of the forester's family ratted him out to the Nazis, my father was then in a position again to run and joined a partisan unit and fought against the Nazis until the end of the war.
Wow.
My mother was an American-born. She was first-generation American.
Amazing. So, growing up, did you always know that you were the daughter of a Holocaust survivor? Do you remember when you really first found out, or was it just kind of something that was just in the family and it wasn't even spoken of, really?
It really was. I describe it as in the air that we breathed, because I don't remember a time when my father specifically said or my mother specifically said, and I don't even know if I knew what the Holocaust meant, but I knew my father was a survivor of this thing.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So your father, I assume, didn't really speak to you and your siblings about his experiences. Did it ever come up in certain conversations at times? Were there little hints that were dropped here and there?
Yes. So he never spoke about it. My brothers and I would sometimes try to ask. He would either answer in a way that was really not an answer, or he would deflect the question or get annoyed. So we just kind of knew, don't ask.
Yeah. And how did that affect your family, not only for you and your siblings, but for your mother as well? Do you have any sense of what that must have been like for her, being someone here, born in America, and falling in love and marrying someone who survived such horrible atrocities?
Well, we used to think of my mother sometimes as the voice of reason, because my father thought in terms of what do we need, and she thought in terms of what do we want. And so we learned early on the difference between want and need, and we would have my mother sort of champion for our causes of an air conditioner or new clothes sometimes.
Yeah. So for you and your siblings, having that, as you said, in the air that you breathe, how did that affect you growing up and the way that you, I suppose, viewed maybe history? If you learned about, let's say, the Holocaust in school, was it something that profoundly affected you? We know that for every 2G, it's different. Every experience is different. And I spoke with one of our other 2Gs on a previous podcast who she said that when she learned about it in school, she couldn't. It was too much for her. So did you kind of have similar experiences where it was too much, or, it was something more so that you and your family embraced in a way?
I don't even think we learned about it in school.
Yeah.
I don't think that was part of the curriculum. I do remember I was very young. I was in fourth grade, and we were doing a school play. We did Fiddler on the Roof.
Okay.
And the teacher was talking about pogroms and explaining in very cursory terms, in fourth grade terms, what that meant. And she had asked if anyone ever heard of the Holocaust. And I raised my hand and said, oh, I have. My father survived that. And I remember her explaining to the class in very cursory terms. And then it sort of dawned on me that, yeah, he has no family. That's true. That must have been really awful. But I really couldn't appreciate the depths of it.
Right. So before that moment, it never had really dawned on you to that significant of a sense that this is what happened to your family, and that's why you really didn't have any extended family on that side of your family. This was a new revelation for you.
Right, exactly, because I didn't know anyone else that was the child of a survivor.
Yeah.
So I thought it was just a thing that happened in my house.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden this teacher knows all about this, and she's sharing it with the class.
Wow. So it's almost that experience of realizing that something that you thought was maybe unique in a way to your family, you realize some people in the outside world actually know about this. They know about what my father lived through. Like it's that weird kind of realizing that your family history is not only your family's history, but it really is history of the world in many ways, something that major that happened.
Right.
Yeah. So when did, I suppose, carrying the torch, as we call it, become something that you thought you might be interested in doing? I know that when I met you, when you first came here to the museum not too long ago, you had this drive, you had this passion. You said, this is what I'm going to do. I have known for quite some time that this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to carry my father's story forward. I'm going to make sure that people know. When did that feeling inside of you begin?
When I was in college, there was a course, the history and psychology of the Holocaust. And, I was always drawn to the topic because I wanted to know more about it. And so I took this class, and I had volunteered for a Children of Survivors study. But because I lived on Long Island and the study was in Buffalo, where I went to school, I wasn't able to be part of the study. And I remember talking with my father about it. And it was probably around that time that I said, he must have survived for a reason, and maybe I'm part of that story, and maybe I need to do more about it. So it was always in the back of my head, but then there was an incident that I experienced at work where my assistant director, I overheard her making an anti-Semitic comment.
Wow.
And I called her out on it.
Wow.
And it became a major event 2 summers ago, where the heads of the university got involved, and I was being blamed for an overreaction. And so at that point, I said, if they're that ignorant to think that this is an overreaction, I have to do more about this. And that was my call.
Wow. So this has been something that you've considered and pondered for decades at this point, but it really, as you said, that one incident really just kind of started it from, all right, I have to start now. Instead of maybe waiting a few more years till you're fully retired, I have to start right now. Wow. I mean, it's unfortunate that something negative was the cause, but I can say for myself and everyone here at HMTC, it has been really such a immense pleasure having you as a part of our community for the last couple of years. And, I want you to share with our listeners what ways through your work at HMTC or outside of HMTC do you carry the torch? What specifically do you do so that everyone gets a sense of what that means for you?
Well, now I sort of shout it from the rooftops. I've invited all of my friends and family to tour the museum and to hear my father's testimony that I share. I have given talks for the Department of Human Rights for the state of New York. So I am now, I'd like to think, this new chapter is an advocate for stomping out anti-Semitism and empowering people to embrace tolerance in all forms.
Yeah. So What has the reaction been? We talk about the Department of, I'm sorry, what was the name?
Human Rights.
Department of Human Rights. What was the reaction, to speaking to such an important audience? What was that like for you and for them?
For me, it was such an honor and such a high to be able to share my experience with anti-Semitism and how I rose above it to make this a positive, that I can spread the word now of tolerance. And I think I was fortunate, it was well received. I not only spoke at the state conference, but last week I spoke at the local conference as well.
Wow. It's incredible work that you're doing. And I know that from working with you side by side throughout your journey here at HMTC, it's not an easy journey to go from not speaking at all about your family and what your father went through to now suddenly you're, as you say, shouting from the rooftop. So tell me a little bit, what was that process like for you emotionally and intellectually?
This was one of the most profoundly meaningful experiences of my life. I spent all of last summer researching so that I could compile the history and have it match the little bit I knew of my father's story, so that I was able to then create a testimony. It has made me more compassionate. It has. I have the best relationship with my father now. My father's been dead 25 years, and I am closer to him now than ever. And I am so proud to be able to do this. I feel so honored and so blessed that I have this, support of my community to be able to embark on this journey.
And speaking about the support, I know that your immediate family and your friends, everyone is so supportive of you. I know earlier this year, you had a little mini fundraiser here at the museum. As you said, you invited everyone in your circle to come here. And what was that experience like for you to see that overwhelming support that they have for you?
It was outstanding to know that friends invited people I didn't even know because they were so moved by my story and my experience that they wanted them to hear it. I'm blown away by the honor.
Yeah. And for your sons, the third generation, what has this been like for them to see you doing this? I'm sure you've had conversations with them about what it's been like for you. I'm sure they've seen this process kind of unfolding over the last couple of years. What has their reaction specifically been as the third generation?
Well, it's very interesting because my younger son was born 9 months after my father died. Wow. And so he never had the opportunity to know him. My older one was 3 and doesn't really remember him. But more specifically, my younger son happens to look exactly like my father. So for his entire life, everyone had said, "Oh, you look just like Papa." And now I feel like he was able to know his grandfather, and both boys have said that they feel his presence with them, and they very much would like to. They're waiting till I pass the torch to them, and they have read the testimony, they've heard the testimony, they've cried with me over the testimony, and they said that they feel the responsibility to share it.
What an incredible experience for you and your family to have this journey unfolding. And, as you said, it's such a profound experience for you, but it sounds like it was just as profound for them as well. And the fact that you know that you have the next generation kind of lined up to take this on, which not every second gen has for a variety of reasons. So I can only assume that you must feel such a sense of pride and comfort knowing that the third generation is ready and willing to take it on as soon as the time comes. Whenever they have that moment, the way you had a moment where you felt that now is the time, and hopefully theirs is a bit more positive than yours was, then they'll take it on when that time comes. So that must be some, sort of comfort to you, I would have to imagine.
It's huge. It's huge. I feel like I I did it initially for my parents, for my father, and now I do it also for my sons. There's no greater honor than knowing that, the expression "la door va door." Mm-hmm. So from generation to generation, that this is part of our legacy, and they are ready and willing to accept the responsibilities.
And giving testimony on behalf of your father is not the only way that you carry that torch, because you are also a trained docent here, and you give museum tours to student groups and adult groups. Mm-hmm. And I know that you try to weave in a little bit of your own personal experiences into the tour, as most of our second generation survivors do that as well. So it's an additional way that you make sure that, at least maybe to a lesser degree than specifically giving testimony, that his experiences and that his story lives on. So how do you, when you are giving a museum tour and you specifically mention your history, your father, how do you weave that into the tour in a way that you find meaningful, that will resonate with the students specifically? Well,
I start really at the beginning of the tour. In room 1, I show pictures of the wall of pictures that we have of people whose family, were in Europe at the time, and I right away explained that I had no pictures, which is so impactful for me, and now I see that it does resonate, that I don't know what my grandparents, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, what any of them looked like. And then we move forward, and when we talk about the ghettos, I talk about my father's experiences in the ghettos, and how the slave labor that he had to do. And it usually resonates because he wasn't either much older or much younger than the people that were touring for the most part, for the school children. And then I talked about the rescuers, and that the forester that was an upstander and saved him, and tried to save as many as possible. And I talk about the resistance and how my father was able to fight in a partisan unit. Then in the displaced persons section, I talk about his experiences, that I found pictures of him on the web that I never knew existed, and what his life might have been like there. And then I talk about the immigrant story, about coming to America, not knowing a soul, not speaking the language, and building a life.
And that's the beauty of being able to tie in your family's history to the tour. You can make it personal in a way that someone like myself, who's not a 2G, 3G, or anything of that nature, can do. I do my best, but you having that personal experience and that family connection really does make a difference, I can say. And so while you haven't been doing this for necessarily too long, is there a specific time, whether it be here at the museum or speaking outside of the museum, that really resonated with you? Maybe you got a specific question that really just took you back, or an audience reaction just was so overwhelming. Do you have any specific moment that to you stands out as a highlight in this?
Yeah, I think that the school children seem to embrace the story of the forester, and how one person can make such a difference. Because I let them know, if not for that forester, good chance I wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
So this man I've never met, I never knew existed, for close to 60 years, might be responsible for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Which was such, when we think about that, we try to put that into words and terms that the students can understand. It's hard. It's hard to imagine that this one man and his family who helped save your father is practically responsible for you sitting here today doing this podcast, for your family today, your kids. It's a really hard thing to wrap our heads around, especially for students that are coming in. But we do the best we can through the education that we do to make things personal in a way that they will understand. And so I want to ask you, in this day and age, why do you feel that Holocaust education is so important? And specifically, why is it so important to you?
Well, to me, it speaks to my family history. It's keeping my father's legacy alive, and in turn honors my mother and the support that she gave, which I'm sure was not easy for close to 50 years, not knowing his story. It's also setting an example for my children. But one of my key hopes is if I reach just one person, one kid that might have been the bully, and he now thinks, or she now thinks about their action and stops it, then I might have then changed the trajectory of a bunch of lives. And so that's probably the biggest takeaway.
And so as we wrap up here, I want to ask you, what is your hope for the future? What would your message be to our listeners, to the generation today? Kind of where do you stand on things? You do this work with such purpose. Clearly, it's evident in everything that you're saying that there's such purpose for you personally, but also ethically, morally, really. So what is your message to anyone who's listening?
I think the first message is if we were to all embrace our differences, our histories, who we are, what we can learn from each other, I think that makes us a richer community. So that's my hope, is that we create this beautiful mosaic of a society and embrace it, especially given the impact of negativity, of social media, and the stress that the younger generation is under to conform and to believe things that aren't necessarily true, is to go do your research, do your homework, and embrace differences. We're all better because of it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Linda. I appreciate you not only as a member of our community, but really as someone who has come in full force. I can remember like it was yesterday, you coming in and you said, I want to do this. Just tell me what I need to do and I'll make it happen. And that in itself is so admirable. And even today, before this podcast, you're working on potentially becoming a part of another program that we have here, another initiative. And you were sharing with me that any way you can help at all is something that you're willing to do. And that alone, I commend you for and appreciate you immensely. And so I thank you. I thank you for your time today. I really appreciate having you here. And to all of our listeners, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And we will see you next time on Legacy Chronicles.